Last week we talked about transitions and how what I was saying again last week, and for those who weren't here, was that I think often like the mark of a really great movie star is, hey Tim, is in the power of those transitions. That it's not just like we were talking about with a breath, right? That like there's the inhale and there's the exhale, but there's also the moment at the top of the breath as we transition from an inhale into an exhale, and the moment at the end of a breath as we transition from an exhale back into an inhale. And that it's those moments in between, those transitions that often make your work really stand out as an actor. That you don't just freeze, you're not just waiting for a line, that feeling is happening, thoughts are happening. The thing I wanted to talk about this week was behavior. I want to talk about behavior. Sanford Meisner famously said that an ounce of behavior is worth a pound of words. An ounce of behavior is worth a pound of words. What does that mean? How do we judge a person's character? Do we judge a person based on what they say or on what they do? Yeah, we judge people based on what they do, not on what they say. It's the same when it comes to a character in acting. A character could tell you that they're a really good person, but if you see them do something terrible, like I could say I'm a good person, but if you saw me kick a dog, that's going to tell you something else about my character. So character is revealed through behavior, not through language, not just through what we say. Now, language is a form, like speaking is a form of behavior. So I'm not saying it's not important, it is. What is really fascinating and captivating to watch are actors allowing themselves to just simply be that person and to behave however they feel that person would behave under those circumstances in that moment. I heard Natalie Portman talking about a performance that she loved of Meryl Streep's in The Deer Hunter. Who's seen The Deer Hunter? Amazing film, yeah. And there's a moment where Meryl is walking down the street with Robert De Niro. He's just returned home from war. She's so happy to see him. He's been gone for a long time. But since he's been gone, she's also gotten on with her life. And she's become her own person. And there's a moment where they run into some people on the street who know Robert De Niro's character, and he greets them, and as he's having this interaction, Meryl just has this moment where she catches a glimpse of herself in the reflection of a store window, and she fixes herself up. She just starts kind of fixing herself up. And what Natalie Portman was saying was just how brilliant that moment is, because it reveals so much about this woman. And that in the hands of another actor, that actor, during that interaction, might have just stood there and waited while the conversation was happening. There would have been this missed opportunity to tell us something about the character that she's portraying. Does that make sense? And so one of the things that I want you guys to start to think about are those moments in between. Not just about what your character is saying. What are they doing in the scene that reveals who they are, that tells us something about who this person is? Now, this is something that you've got some options with. If you're kind of new to this way of thinking, one of the things that I would suggest you do is maybe start to come up with a few ideas of what you could do in those moments in between. What could you be doing? What other activity could you be doing that reveals character? You know, we've talked about the importance of giving yourself something to do. Not all the time, Obviously, if you're the person entering a scene, you're not going to be in the middle of doing something, right? Like if I'm coming in to initiate a conversation, I'm not in the middle of something else. I'm coming in with a strong emotional point of view. But if I'm already in the scene, I'm not just standing around waiting for a scene to start. I'm going to be in the middle of doing something else. So what are you doing? And whatever you're doing in that moment before, can you come up with something that is going to speak to who your character is? Something that's going to reveal something to the audience. Does that make sense? So I love that Keegan-Michael Key quote. I know I've quoted him before, but Keegan-Michael Key said in this podcast, between the full stop at the end of a sentence and the capital letter of the next sentence, there is a space. And inside that space, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can do whatever you want as an actor. Those spaces in between are for you. And when you're auditioning for something, every actor that's coming into the room is going to be saying the same damn lines. So it can't be about the lines. Does that make sense? You're not going to stand out if all you're thinking about is your dialogue. Because that's the writers, that's what the writer or the director have already given you. We want to see, where's your creativity? How are you going to show up? What are you bringing to the table? Where's your offering? Those moments in between, the full stop and the capital letter, those spaces are for the actor. That's where we really get to see you in the role, your contribution, your understanding. So again, you might want to think about what are some things that you could be doing in those moments in between. I found this really great video of Robin Wright from House of Cards, and she was talking about the one piece of advice she got from David Fincher when she was given some episodes to direct in the final season. She went to Fincher and said, "What do I do?" And Fincher's one piece of advice to Robin Wright was, he said to her, "It's about behavior over time." Behavior over time. What does that mean? It kind of comes back again to the Sanford Meisner quote about an ounce of behavior is worth a pound of words. What Fincher was saying to her was that you want to set up that camera in such a way that we can see characters behaving in a space over time. And that the way those characters behave in those moments is what's worth watching. Behavior is fascinating. We are fascinated by it. And what Fincher was also saying was that it won't feel too long. It's not about the length of the scene. It's about the quality of the behavior. And if the behavior is compelling, we will watch. We will keep watching. You know, it's like what I've said before too. A really short pause can feel like an eternity if there's nothing interesting happening in the frame. But you could take a 10-second pause and it wouldn't feel too long if you're filling that space with behavior, with thought, with feeling, with intention. I was listening to another interview with Jesse Eisenberg, who said when they were doing The Social Network, they spent 3 weeks of rehearsals really just understanding the story and the characters. Because once they had all of that understanding, then those actors could just simply be those characters. And whatever impulses they had in the moment were the impulses that the character was having, and they could trust that. Sometimes we don't have time to figure out exactly who this character is. We've got to just kind of work off of our own impulse and our own understanding of the story based on the information that we have, especially when you've just gotten an audition. The other thing that I want you guys to really have a play with tonight is following your impulses. following whatever impulse you have in the moment, not questioning it, acting on it. Another video that I found this week was from an actor named Michael O'Neill. And Michael O'Neill was talking about a conversation he had with Al Pacino about the actor John Gielgud, the great British actor Sir John Gielgud. And Pacino was saying to this guy, Gielgud has found freedom, like he's free. He's discovered his freedom. And he was saying it with this kind of reverence that made Michael O'Neill kind of go, like, what do you mean? And he said, he's free. He's just free. And Michael O'Neill said it wasn't until he worked with Matthew McConaughey that he really understood what Al Pacino was talking about. Because he said McConaughey was completely free to follow whatever impulse he had, whatever thought he had, whatever feeling he had, whatever preparation he had, or whatever was happening in the moment, he was absolutely free to act on it, to react to it, to use it. In the podcast, our recent podcast interview, I asked Scott Williams about this, that idea that Scott said about, because I asked him once, how do you trust that something is an impulse and not just an idea, like a good idea that you had? And he said, the minute you start to question whether it's an idea, it's no longer an impulse and you've turned it into an idea. You might as well just act on it. I think I sometimes have to remind actors that, even when I get you guys to write down tactics or whatever, just to get you out of your head about what's possible in the scene, the truth of the matter is you can do anything. You can do anything. And if it's in the moment and it doesn't feel like it's arbitrary, it doesn't feel like you're making a choice just to try to be interesting, but we as an audience think that you as the character thinks that whatever you're doing is going to get you what you want, you can do anything. So that's what I want you guys to have a play with tonight, is behavior. It's those moments in between that I want you to get really interested in. You're not doing a scene. You're not just standing around acting at somebody. You're having a conversation. You're a human being. Be human. If you need to, come up with some ideas for behavior, that's absolutely fine. But I really want you to start to trust your impulses. And again, rather than you trying to conform yourself to how you think the line should be said, let the line conform itself to you and to the moment. So one of the things you could do tonight to explore that as you do a run through is do a silent take. Do a run of the scene with no dialogue. And what I mean by that is I don't mean you're then sort of in the scene going, or no miming or kind of cheesy indicating. This is not about indicating. I want you to just see what happens if you can you just be with the other person, knowing what you want. Think of your script analysis, understanding the story, your given circumstances. It's kind of like what Kim Farrant says, right? Like the given circumstances are the riverbank. They provide structure. What do they provide structure for? What does the given circumstances provide you that structure for? The moment. The flow of what's happening in the moment. It will kind of direct the course of what's happening in the moment, just by understanding what the scene's about. That's your homework, right? Is to get clear on the givens so that when you're in the scene, you can just go for the ride down the river and be in flow. Make sense? And I'd rather you go for flow than try to show me the character or try to show me the given circumstances. Do you know what I mean? Trust that you've already done that work. If you just go for the ride, it's that whole thing again, right? Like the thing that I said that Al Duke said to me about working with Philip Seymour Hoffman. If you're feeling 80%, just give 80%. If you're feeling 20%, just give 20%. Because any more than that, and now you're pushing. And now you're indicating. Just go for the ride.